All right, we're marathon casting.
We're doing this on December 13th, but for you, it's December 20th, 2021. Welcome aboard, everybody. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast. We're episode 540.
Yep.
Merry Christmas to you. If you don't listen to us or think about us or dream about us for the next few days and we catch you on the flip side, hope you had a wonderful, merry holiday Christmas. Santa came and brought you something special.
It's not even Christmas yet.
I know, but for them, like if they, they'll listen on the 20th and they like take a week off, by the time they listen to it, it might be, they might have had it. Yeah, I mean, listen, I know you got
did that last time. I'm like, damn, I got to get ship this stuff out today. So it's there by the weekend.
That's right. But I mean, for you guys, you got some traveling, you're going to go see some family, some friends, whatever. You're going to go see, your nana and your papa and whoever it is from, down the road or down the city or across the state. And you got some drive time and you either got kids or no kids and you want to make them listen to us. You might catch us on the flip side of Christmas. So we do. We hope you had a wonderful time away and Santa brought you all the goodies: trainers, pull buoys, swim paddles, aero helmets, power meters, and more. The perfect triathlete stocking. We could do that for the Cassie, the perfect triathlete stocking. The 10, we're not doing that though. I already have a topic.
I was going to say
no, maybe to do it for the
Christmas,
next one.
12 days of triathlon.
Yeah, totally triathlon. The top, stocking stuffers for triathlete. That's like we can't do that. That's like a triathlete magazine article.
Oh, totally.
Mike Trout, professional triathlete who placed 19th at Indian Wells 70.3 in 2016 says, the top 12 best rated stocking stuffers for triathlete this year are. Let me name all the companies that pay us for marketing dollars, and we're going to list them for this article, and that's what we're going to tell you is the best bang for your buck. But no, in all seriousness,
what's the equivalent of 5 golden rings?
Yeah, 5 golden rings?
Yeah.
Aren't the Olympics 5 rings?
Yeah,
go to the Olympics. Trade hard enough for the Olympics. There you go. Boom. Nailed it. There's 5 rings, right?
4 calling birds. Yeah.
4 calling birds. But speaking of nailing it, we didn't nail the intro, but we hope we nail this podcast and we'll negative split it. If it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. So, we know your time is valuable. So thanks for tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps. We do race previews. Sometimes we'll have on the occasional guest. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through, what our athletes are going through. We work with a very wide range of athletes from across the globe, ranging from beginners to, and athletes who have never competed in triathlon or 5K or 10K, cycling event, swimming event, running event, whatever it might be, all the way up to elite level amateurs from all over the world. We use the training that we provide for them and then the kind of constant communication and feedback through training peaks, emails, text, you name it. That drives the topic of the day, and that will drive the topic of today, actually. We also have a Facebook group, which is Crushing Iron Group. If you want to answer one simple question, we'll let you right in. There's a lot of awesome people in that community who are
5,000.
But there's 5,000 people in there?
Close.
That's a lot of people.
4.9.
Triathletes rounded up or round down.
Well, that was the last time I looked, so it might be close to.
It might be close to like 7,800. Okay. But yeah, cop in there. A lot of awesome people in there. Answers. A lot. It was Ian. So that was when you do two podcasts in a row. That was a little bit Norwegian for you.
Is that the guy that won the?
That's right. That's the guy who won Ironman Cozumel. But no, there's a lot of awesome people in there who are more than happy and willing to answer your questions, give you some of their feedback, which is what we do. Just kind of go through our life experiences, our own training, share with you the obstacles that we've overcome, our mistakes, but also our triumphs. And hopefully we can deliver that to you in a informative and consumable way so you can apply it to your life and then help you along your happy and healthy endurance sports journey.
Yeah, it might be too late to get in the club, but if you send me a nice email.
Yeah, send old Santa Mike an email if you want to get in the club. We got that.
Email me at crushingiron@gmail.com and see if we can figure that out.
You can do what Ironman does when you ask for like a deferral. And they always, because this happened at least 50 times last year. I'd get like a forward from an athlete who's trying to defer from one event to the next. And they do like the one line of like, you can't tell anybody we're doing this, but we're going to make one special exception for you.
For you.
A one-time transfer to, the race of your choice. And they're like, don't do this again. It's kind of like the Chicago Marathon and Escape from Alcatraz lottery. They're like, I got in. And you're like, 498 people applied. Shockingly enough, 498 people got selected to also participate in the lottery. But no, if you're extra nice to Mike, shoot him an email. He'll let you in. And you can learn more about that on our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. Yeah, I hope I'm not having a stroke right now. That'd be bad. If I have one, finish up the podcast, make it to at least 40 minutes, and then take me to hospital. But no, that is it. We were going to dive back into the listener or the questions we had in the Facebook group, but an email exchange earlier with an athlete, and I think just a good time of year to go through planning for a year and how to truly address weaknesses. And we'll go over that today, and then we'll try and finish up a couple of the other questions maybe next week. But again, going into 2022, and this is, I think, an area that when athletes think of next year and what they're trying to do, what they want to accomplish, it's not like we go back, down memory lane from 2021 and we think, all right, these are all the things that did great. Let's just focus on those. As triathletes, we always have like a case of the butts, like we do a great race. And the first thing we say is, that was a PR about 48 minutes, but
I think I got a lot more in
I feel like I got a lot more in me, which is the life of a coach. And this is like, when you think about, the year you have coming up, things you can work on specifically. We're not going to hone and harp on the obvious things like you shouldn't even be having this conversation if you're not consistent, because consistency is the kind of underlying piece that brings it all together and will lead you to improvement and performance gains. But the athlete that I was speaking with earlier is all about swimming. Swimming is what's keeping me from, furthering myself on the podium. Is already kind of a podium level athlete in a lot of areas, and maybe even qualifying for Kona. And while I agree with that on some levels, I think it's always best. And listen, like, you're not going to hear another podcaster out there probably besides maybe the Tower 26 guys that's going to harp on swimming and the importance of it as much as I am. It is hugely important. It is wildly undertrained and underrated in terms of its importance in the sport. But as a coach, and when I try to give advice to athletes, so when I program the weeks for athletes and you look at weaknesses, it's always best to look at what has the highest likelihood, right? Because triathlon, just like you can't train an athlete like a swimmer and then just a solo cyclist, and then just like an open marathon, open half marathon runner, you have to train them as a triathlete. You can't, pick one sport to focus on and just disregard the others. Or you can't do a super run heavy block where you're running 5, 6, 7 days a week, you're up in mileage, you're maybe even including like tempo and hill work. And then also be like, you know what we're going to do at the same time? We're going to try and increase our FTP. Because it doesn't work. You can't overload your system like that. You'll be running so hard and so much you won't see the increases. Same goes for, it's about time allocation. I always kind of make the analogy, but it looks kind of like a whack-a-mole. Like you one thing pops up that you want to address, you have to whack it, and the other one, as soon as you get in with that, something else pops up, and then something else pops up, and something else pops up. The biggest things I think for you to look at are, and again, it's all very different in terms of where you think you're giving up the most time in the race, especially if you're trying to vie for a podium spot. It's like, how far back are you behind behind the winner of your age group? If you're 20 minutes behind the winner, and let's say you gave up 4 minutes in the swim, 15 minutes on the bike, and 3 minutes on the run, and you're thinking, all right, well, the bike's where I got to spend the meat, of my time. That might be the correct answer, and it probably is. But what you always have to ask yourself is, how have I been trending, right? And then what kind of availability do I have to address the positive trends in my training? If you've been an athlete who's consistently taking off, a good chunk of a percentage off your previous year's times in swim, bike, and run, then what you're doing is working. But it's also about the availability to do it. Or do you have more time and more availability to run or ride or swim? But at the same time, if you can look at your positive trends and you continue to take off, a certain percentage or a decent percentage off all three at the same time, then a lot of times there's really no reason to kind of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Same can be said for if you find yourself really, really struggling in one area and you haven't put in the volume, that's usually the easiest one to come through. If you haven't seen a lot of improvement in the run, you can kind of go back through your statistics, throughout the year. You can do that easily in Training Peaks by going to the dashboard and clicking on the picking like a single sport graph and finding average miles or average, duration for the week of running or riding. It's miles, obviously swimming is yardage, and look back. All right, well, I didn't improve that much this year in this, because I think we always have this, we kind of overshoot what we really did. We're like, hey, I really nailed it this year. I swam a ton, a lot more. It's always a lot more than I used to is all of a sudden, means I swam enough to see a lot of improvement. Where just because you came from not swimming enough and not running enough and not riding enough, you're going to see improvement, but it might still not be up to snuff of like how much you want it to be. So some things to look at, and the biggest thing obviously with swimming is if it is the area in which you have the most to improve on. And it's not about just improving your swim time. It's also about improving its effect or limiting its effect on running and riding is, it might not be a 5-minute decrease in time where you're getting 5 minutes faster in 70.3 or 10 minutes faster in Ironman, but it's allowing you to come out of the water, a little bit faster, but also fresher, then you're improving. And you're able to bike harder and bike for longer, and then you're going to go off the bike quicker and then get onto the run feeling better. It's all connected. And so I think always look at availability, what you like to do the most. And if you've been on a big run block and that worked out well for you, then keep running and what you're doing is working. But don't just dump one, right? It was an Andy Potts article I read a long, long time ago. People asked him if, since he was such a great swimmer, that if he I'll swim once or twice a week. He swam for the University of Michigan. And they asked him if he kind of didn't take it as seriously. He said, no. He said, you always want to keep your great. Because if you don't, it'll slip to good. And then you'll have nothing that's great. He said, what you can do is keep that great and understand and realize how everyone else is working extra hard and allocating specific bike and run hours or mileage, or however you want to look at it, to increasing their swim to catch up to him. That's the time that he's using to get better at the bike, at the run, to make sure he doesn't have to, he's not losing spots. And so I think when you look at your whole season, and it may sound complicated, or too much to handle, obviously, is to really look at, is your weakness, but also most importantly, how have you been trending? Has it stayed the same for 4 or 5 years? Or if you're getting faster, then you all across the board, then you still keep doing what you're doing. You just might have to tweak things here and there.
Mm. Well, I don't know. That seems like a lot of study, but
it's, yeah.
Well, that thing about Potts, man, and I'm not the guy that does it, and swim's never been my thing. I've always really wanted to be a good swimmer. It's been one of those things. I just really want to be a fast swimmer, but I do notice, man, that I will say that I think if you swim a lot, I just think it naturally makes you better in this sport. I think there's so many, you get the aerobic advantage, you get the core advantage, you get the, swimming in water that's colder than your body that makes you burn fat. There's all these things that when I start swimming a lot towards the end of, usually in the summer for a late season Ironman, that's when I really see my body coming together too. It's like, I feel like I'm just getting stronger overall. We talked about that kind of, I think the other day, but, I do think that proportionally swim probably takes the back seat across the board for most triathletes.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And if you think about the overall body benefits of swimming and without the pounding and, all that kind of stuff, if you're doing, say, what you should do in the run and what you should do in the bike, and you're doing 50% of what you should be doing in the pool, I think naturally, if you did 100% of the pool, that would make your run and your bike better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Without, you know what I mean? And what you're always saying is, because it's, whenever I'm in really good swim shape, I really kind of, my thing is I always, when I'm doing Wisconsin, I train harder for the swim because I know what I'm facing. And then, this year at Chad, I trained fairly hard, but I knew, and we ended up having a wetsuit and it was downstream and everything like that. So so my thing is I always try to swim to my capabilities more so. And usually at Wisconsin, I don't end up doing that because it usually eats my lunch with the waves and stuff. I've just had that kind of luck up there. But I get out of there just absolutely lambasted. But I think it's because I'm in better shape that I could handle it. Like if I trained this year, like I trained this year and then I was going to do Wisconsin, I would have probably that thing would have eaten my lunch, I bet. So I guess the point is like, if you're trained, like I was trained up enough to take a beating in that swim and come out and actually still have good races at Wisconsin. But this year, I knew I had a fairly straight downstream, decently easy swim, and it didn't eat me up, but I still wasn't trained up anywhere near. And I think it affected my bike and my run, so I don't know. It's a weird little thing because
it's a puzzle, right? And that's why it can be so confusing and so overwhelming for athletes to kind of tackle and think, all right, well, I want to take 30 minutes off my Ironman time, for example. And they're like, all right, I think I can get 10 from my swim or 15 from my run and 10 from my bike and 5 from my swim.
On a perfect day.
On a perfect day, right? But it's also very dependent on the course you do, so it's like, your fastest swim and your slowest swim. Like, what's the gap between those? Same goes for your bike. But at the core of it, when you address your weaknesses, a couple of things you always need to kind of scale through. Am I addressing or identifying my weakness based on the slowest of my 3, right? Against the field, against what I've done. 2, and if that's how you're doing it, is the time in which I've dedicated to it proportionate to the time I've dedicated to the other 2, right? So like, if you I've always challenged you, you've always said, hey, I'm a better cyclist. I do this and that. And I'm like, oh, I think you're actually a better runner. Naturally better runners. Because if you look at proportionately the time in the years that you've had dedicated to cycling versus where you fall against the field versus the very small amount of time and hours you put in running and where you tend to fall, I would say that running is easily, your strongest. And so I think that's just a common kind of misconception when we kind of look at the numbers in a raw form of, well, this is my slowest, right? And so I got to be if you again, looking at your trend and how you've improved, if you've only been swimming seriously for a year or 2 and you're making big jumps, but yet you're still in the quote unquote front of the pack, as a cyclist or a runner, but you've been allocating all of your hours, into that, and you're not seeing any improvements. Well, then maybe one of those are your weaknesses. Even though they might fall, you might fall up towards the pointing into the field in one of them. If you're still putting in a ton of hours and a ton of volume in running and riding, and you can't just seem to get an improvement, then maybe identify that as your weakness, because to me, it's always about availability and investment, right? What is the better ROI that you're getting right now? Could you be better served by taking off? Like if you haven't taken off, 5 minutes off your half marathon in 70.3 or 10 minutes off your full marathon, same course, similar conditions. I know it's hard to judge, but you're putting in a ton of hours, and you haven't even do that, but yet you're still making small gains in your swim, having only swam for a year or 2, although it's quote unquote your slowest, right? Then I would think, all right, well, maybe it's time for me to change things up in the bike and the run, because whatever I'm doing is not working. And maybe if I'm seeing that much of a gain in the swim based on the only time that I've been doing is basically 2 years and I'm slowly creeping my way up, what if I did do a swim block? And I saw and scaled the other ones back, because obviously the volume that I'm doing is either too much or too hard, or it's not working. I'm not getting the right response from it. I'm not wasting hours. I'm just not getting as much out of them. What if I could allocate, going from swimming, 6,000 to 8,000 yards a week, which is what, probably a lot of triathletes do, to doing 12 to 15,000 yards a week, and do that for 2 months, and do it this time of year, see what kind of response I can get then. Because like you said, a lot of athletes, the run always gets kind of blamed because it's last, right? They're like, I got to run more. And it's like, you probably overbiked, you probably didn't do it, and then you came out of the water smoked, right? You hopped on your bike, you didn't have a good pacing strategy, you probably biked too hard, and you always blame it on the run. We always kind of blame and revert back to, well, it's my weakness because this is my weakness. I honestly think that, given my background, even though swimming is the one that I kind of fall in the upper category of, I don't think it's my strength. I think, but in the 3, just because it's where I am, the front of the field, running for me is the one that I've always seen that I've adapted and gotten faster and quicker with the right kind of work. Cycling has always been the one for me that has been the most challenging to see the improvement in. So it's like, which one do you consider your weakness? The one that is your quote unquote slower one, right, against the field, or the one that you have found the most challenging to see the equal amount of improvement versus time invested? And because for age group athletes, it's all about time invested, because you only have a certain amount of time to invest. And so I was trying to kind of, explain to this athlete that was, talking about, things to focus on for next year and attempt to qualify for Kona, was like, if we, yes, your swim is a little bit slower than the guys on the podium, but not by much. But you're also just a little bit behind on the bike and the run. And we looked up the amount of yardage he was able to swim last year, average, and it's averaged out to less than 6,000 yards a week, which ain't going to cut it. But what I said was, and this is important for I think every athlete to understand, is that if your work and your personal life don't allow for huge focuses on swimming, which usually means, you're staying close to home, you're not traveling, you live close to the pool, you're pretty flexible, you don't have a lot of responsibilities with kids or anything to get, then maybe don't make that your focus. Then bike more or run more, because the time that you can invest in that, for me as a coach, a lot of athletes, the way that you train them is to see in the swim, again, because you can't, age group athletes, you don't send them to the gym 5 days a week. They don't have the time, right? Because if you send an age group athlete who's got a job and family responsibilities, whatever it is, even if they're not traveling, this is like just regular 9-to-5 Joe with 2 kids, and a wife, you send them to the pool 5 times a week to swim for an hour, you're asking for 10 hours out of their week, almost a half day, to be dedicated to swimming. That ain't going to work for most athletes, right? It might work for, single Stan who's got, works remotely and can go to the gym at 8:00 at night and get in a swim, or do whatever he wants to and swim on Saturday and Sundays or anything. That might work for him. But for most athletes, the point of working so hard on your swim is because, and when you get to the pool to work on it, is I need to be faster. I need to be stronger. I want to see some gains, and you should. But what I really want to do is be able to come out of the water fresh, to be able to attack the bike and run, the 2 of the 3 sports that I can dedicate the most time and see the most gapped improvement from, in terms of taking off chunks of minutes, 20, 30 minutes off a bike, 10 to 15, 20 minutes off a marathon. That's where I want to see the improvement. But I also know that no matter how many hours I dedicate to cycling, no matter how many hours I dedicate to running, if I don't at least get myself in good swim shape, I might not be trying to drop from a 155 pace to a 125 pace, but if I used to come out of the water at 155, land blasted, like you said, and be smashed, get on the bike, even though I've done a lot of bike volume, if I can get out of the water and swim 150 average, but come out of the water fresh as a daisy, sign me up, right? Because it's not. And again, I think that's where people have this confusion, or they just forget to think through it this way. It's not just about taking minutes off your actual quote unquote swim time. It's about how many minutes you're able to get back in the bike and the run because you came out of the water fresh, right? It's the equivalent of, when people come out and they're like, hey, I went on a run today and I felt unreal. But I felt unreal because I haven't ran in 5 days, and you're like, I get it. But that's the thing, right? It's like, and that's how, you tapering, like you take fatigue, fatigue masks fitness.
Yeah.
Say it to yourself. Fatigue masks fitness. So if you come out of the water super fatigued and smoked, it's going to mask your fitness in the bike and in the run. See, that's how you kind of have to, I know it's a shift, right, in the way that you should think about things in terms of speed and efficiency, and that's also true, but you're kind of, with how short the swim is relative to a 112-mile bike, a freaking marathon, or even a 56-mile bike in a marathon, yes, you should come out of the water a little bit faster, but it's about allowing yourself to have the ability to bike and run your best. And that is why the training is a little bit different than it is for the other two. But that's how you should think of it. If I really want to, again, bike my best and feel fresh and not fatigued, then I need to swim enough.
Mm. Historically, and I want to get your advice on this or thoughts, is I've been that historically in my races. I've been, like 50th out of the water, 30th off the bike, and then kind of in the 20 range off the run. So I think that's the right progression. You don't want to be first out of the water and start, going backwards either. But so to me, it's sort of like I've always had this thing in my head about how, can I get to 30th out of the water or something like that, and then have that same progression. That's how you get, up front. But you think that running's my strength. I'm kind of curious as far as my upside goes, you know what I mean? Like, where do you think probably is running? I mean, if you think about that, I mean, if I could ever pull together a solid run, that would definitely be the easiest way to make up time, I guess, now that I think about it. But I've always had this thing about, man, I still think that kind of comes back to not biking enough. You know what I mean? Like, I've had really good run training for a lot of races, but I feel like a lot of times I'll get out of the water pissed off and like, damn it, I got to make it. And I just suck it up and just put the hammer down and just bike. And then
I'm glad you asked this question, because we've talked about it before, I think off air. Is one of the reasons why I think you're such a strong runner is because you never swim and bike enough. And you are still able to run fairly well off the bike than you are and coming out of the swimming. If you look back and like, hey, percentages on how much you train and what you focus on, the fact that it's the last thing that you do after and you still tend to pass, you still find a way to move up within your age group off the run. Traditionally, in most races, that's where you kind of move your way up. The fact that it's the last thing that you do, the least fresh and the most fatigued, probably from attacking a race where you might have had some good swim fitness, but maybe not enough, right? Or you did some long rides, maybe not enough. So you go through two, maybe not enough, into another, maybe not enough. And then you're able to rip off and have the ability to run a full marathon, right? In a lot of races, or run quicker in a half. That's the other thing. That's the kind of like glimpses people see, like when you head out in training and you kind of like rip off a huge day and you're like, I didn't know I had that in me. You as a coach, you look at insights and like, man, like you really didn't have any business running that or riding that or swimming that. So what do we have in us that we really haven't tapped into yet? And what would happen if we swam enough so we can bike, the right pace at a good distance and then come off and really, really run. And I think that's going back to attacking and thinking of triathlon instead of it is a race, a swim, bike, run, but how they're weighted to me isn't about their distance, but it's about when you reach a level of fatigue. And to me, it's a swim warm up followed by a consistent steady bike and then a run race, because it is always about 100%, always about the run. I think twice in the history of the Ironman World Championships has somebody come off the bike and led wire to wire. And they always say that you can't win it in the swim, but you sure can lose it. And I even think, even though he might not admit this, because I don't watch his YouTube videos, but Lionel Sanders came out of the water at Indian Wells. The last few races, he's been, I think, basically too egotistical in wanting to prove that he's improved his swim by over swimming and coming out of the water and coming and fading later on in the race. In this race at Indian Wells, where he won, he was a kind of a surprising like 3 minutes back in a 70.3, which is pretty far. There were some pretty solid swimmers in there, but there were plenty that he could have easily been in either the back of the front pack or at least in the middle to front of the second pack leading, and maybe been 90 seconds or less down, but he was about 3 minutes back. And then he blew his way through the field, through the bike, and then he ended up winning. He probably wouldn't have won if the guy hadn't gotten hit by a car, but still, he put out a performance that was unreal. And what I honestly think, and again, this may or may not have been a stretch, but I think is he was like, you know what? I want to improve on my swim, but maybe I'm swimming so hard that I'm not really able to use my weapons. That is my bike and my run, because I'm coming out of the water so smashed, trying to prove that I've gotten so much faster and swim with the front pack to really compete. Well, if I get out of the water and I'm swimming with the front pack, but I can no longer bike or run with the front pack because I've fatigued myself so much to really show my true level of fitness, then what's the point? And I think and I think it's brilliant because you also think of like, the free draft you get when you come out of the water. Like Will Emery, a guy we talked before, way back in Louisville days, he was the top age group amateur, beat a bunch of pros. He would always start last in getting in the water because you get the free slingshot effect of working your way through a field in the free draft, and that's what he'd pick up. And then he always run his way in hot weather to the podium and qualify for Kona. But it's the strategy piece that you can't just kind of bullheadedly go into your training or race thinking, all right, I got to prove that I can do this, because everything is affected by everything. And again, when you look at how important the run is to every race that you do, you're either going to run your way onto the podium or to your PR, or you're going to walk your way to a disappointing day. It's, you might not have the bike you want to, but it's always about the run. And so in order to express your true run fitness and still have a good day and still have a time very representative of what you feel like is your best effort, that your ability, your best fitness, you have to swim enough so you can bike at the level and pace that is good enough to get off and then have a run race. Because that is exactly what it is. It is 100% a run race. That's, after a very long bike and a very hard swim. And that is how you have to approach it when you think about, again, strengths, weaknesses, things are going to affect one thing and then affect another and affect another. That is how triathlon is. One thing, it's a domino. And that's also why it's so incredibly challenging, because you can't just disregard two and focus on one, because then those might become your weaknesses, and you can't, but that's again why the biggest reason, that's why you can't address them as three individual sports, but as one, and so going back to what you said, that's why I've always thought you were, or maybe, maybe not better, but have more raw, quote unquote, talent as a runner than you do the other two. Cycling, again, going back to like identifying strengths and weaknesses, cycling might, quote unquote, be your strength just because you like to ride your bike more, and like that's one of those things where, something.
I just have the background. I don't really even like riding my bike that much, but it just comes naturally. It
comes naturally.
Like
Same thing for swimming. Like it's just like I don't swim nearly enough,
right.
And like even for Ohio 70.3 this year, when I did it, I was still coming out of the water fair tap, but I swam probably like 20,000 yards total last year leading up to it. Does that mean it's my best? No, it probably means honestly my weakest, because of what I could have put into it and didn't get out of it. And I think that's the question you have to ask ourselves when you identify strengths and weaknesses is, what did I put in and then what did I get out? Mm-hmm. And that's the ratio you have to kind of go by. It's not always about what's your weakest, because if you go back and like, I didn't get a lot better in my run this year. I didn't. What'd you do? I probably ran 2-3 times a week, but they were quality. When I ran, but like, that's not enough to see improvement. And that's always, I think, also a hard question we have to ask ourselves. But then moving forward, like we were talking about, if you want to improve on something, you can't just kind of pick it out and like throw it at a dartboard and think, that's going to work. I'm just going to do more of it. If you don't have time to do more of it, or you can't carve out the availability to do things and make it right, then you're just going to be beating your head against the wall trying to get better. And that's why, either having, a coach or getting an analysis, some kind of thing is always helpful to have kind of like someone else be like, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And the pieces of the puzzle might not, look all the same right now. They might look, unevenly distributed, but the name of the game is for them all to come together, on race day. And that's why we swim the way we swim. That's why we bike the way we bike. And then you get to race day and you're like, that's okay. Now I see, because you train an athlete for the last half of their run. And everything you do and how you swim and how you ride is dictated on how you want them and what position you want them to be in or believe they can be in to run their best the back half of the run. And and that's kind of how you work your way backwards for an athlete. It's not about, it's about swimming really hard. No, it's not. It's about swimming, feeling fairly, efficient and getting out, and then biking where you get off the bike and you're like, I don't feel like I biked. Then you're in good position to do what you want to do. And it's really been, athletes obsess about, again, like, their FTP or their 100-yard swim time. And these are all like good little carrots to have, I think, this time of year to kind of keep you entertained and engaged and not kind of drift off into, what do you mean I have to ride my bike 4 times this week and it's all going to be aerobic in zone 2? I don't want to do that. It sounds boring. You know, it's okay to liven things up and do things differently, but when it comes down to wanting to piece things together to allow yourself the best ability to rip off, you know, your best, then that's when it has to be. And if you're continuously doing that in a race format, then you think, well, I got more to go. And like, I got more improvement to see. And it can either be 2 minutes on the swim, or it can be 20 minutes total coming off your bike and your run combined.
Yeah, I mean, if you break it out like as in 100% effort for everything, and you say, just hypothetically, the swim, you want to use 10% of your effort on that day, and then for your bike, you want to use 40% of your, and then ideally to have like half the effort left going into the run or something. I'm just thinking about it in terms of, it would be nice if you had 50% of your effort to use in the run that day. But as we know, we've seen many, many Ironman. I've probably watched at least 25 Ironman in my day. 500,000 people are walking on the,
Oh God, more than half.
more than half.
Walk
so,
the back
you know
half.
what I'm saying? So I feel like instead of going 40% of your energy on the bike, most people probably go 60% of the energy, and they leave 30% left for the run. When you want 50, I'm making all this stuff up, but when then you need 120.
Exactly. To overcome
Yeah,
how
so then
much
it's
you
like
overshot.
that grinder, that's that mentality. And if you don't have your head in the game, you didn't sleep good, all these other things, you can't summons that energy. It's just not going to be there. But I'm just thinking hypothetically, because my big thing is always like, I want to take the swim out of the equation as much as possible, as far as like the least amount of effort with a decent performance. And then the bike, I've always overrode probably for most part compared to my fitness level. And so I'm always squeaking up into that, into my run effort up there, my run reservoir. You want to have so much left in your
It's a great way to put it. Yeah, it's like that's a really great way to put it, is you have this best run in you. Again, given all things equal, that you've trained enough, you've done enough, like, if you allocated, 100 points, right? You really only want to use 60 of them on the run. The other, you want to save more than half your energy to rip off a marathon, or rip off your fastest open half marathon, time in a 70.3. Well, every time you overextend or you don't do enough fitness to where you have to start, like you said, dipping in that reservoir, even on the swim, right? Because the amount of things the amount of buckets or points, whatever you want to like or drops from the reservoir, you have to start picking up in the swim. To me, you can multiply that by 2 of what you're going to have to increase in the bike, because now you're more likely to be taking away more points from the run on your bike because you're already tired, right? So your amount of fatigue is increased exponentially, because if you're already tired coming out of the swim, then you're going to fatigue even quicker, coming off the bike. Whereas, if you're undertrained in both, but let's say you've trained really, let's say 2 athletes, one trains really, really, really well in the swim. They're super fit. They got great swim fitness, but they didn't bike enough. And they might get out of the water. They might not need to dip in their run reservoir until like mile 50 of a 70.3, right? But because they haven't biked enough, but they swim great. But if you take an athlete who ran a ton, I'm a runner, I'm going to kill my run this year, and that athlete didn't swim enough, didn't bike enough, well, they're probably going to start dipping in their run reservoir at mile 40. And it's not just one dip. It's probably 2 dips, 3 dips, 4 dips. And instead of going into the run, in the last part of your race with a 60% in the reservoir, they might be down to 45, 50 maybe. Then where are you left? Like you said, you're no longer about running fast. Now you're about hedging your bet, right? I can't race this anymore because I don't feel it. So can I run it well, or do I have to kind of play it safe and not rip it? And so now you kind of go in the run already on the defensive, which is, I think, more than half of triathletes' mentality is they get off the bike and they're on the defensive. You know how wonderful it is as an athlete or as a coach to watch athletes and think, I cannot wait for them to get off this bike because they are going to get after it. And to have that mentality of being on the offensive instead of the defensive, getting off the bike, it all starts in the front. It all starts with your swim training, your swim fitness, how much you swam, all your training, technique, and then you got to get all that right. Then you got to get the bike right? That's why it's, again, the sport is we love it so much because it's so complicated and so complex, and you never have, gotten it totally right until you want to do it more. And then you get on the bike. Then I got to pace it well. Then I have, my position has to be dialed in. My pacing has to be dialed in. My nutrition has to be perfect. I had to have done all the training and be healthy. And then I get to get off the bike. And now I get to get after it. And that's like it's a never ending pursuit of, plug in this hole and then another one pops out. It's like, you're trying to, you've seen those like cartoons and stuff where a canoe, busts one hole and they plug it and then, pops another one. They plug that one, that pops another. That's like triathlon training. It's like you can plug one hole or one deficit or weakness or thing that you don't think you're very good at. And you might take all your time to plug that one and then another one pops up. And you're like, Jesus, when are they're never going to, because either real or perceived, we always are going to try and look for things to do better and to be better. And again, like that's why this sport, we love it so much, because it's so addictive. Because while most triathletes are type A, quote unquote, perfectionists, we like to figure out when things are wrong. If things were perfectly and triathlon was easy and endurance sports were fun and energizing and we never had to worry about things or focus on things, it was all just super simple and easy, we wouldn't be attracted to it. We like it and we love it and we crave it because it's complex. It is frustrating because there's nothing more satisfying and gratifying to an athlete or a type A person or to a high performing individual or athlete than to overcome, to get better, to grow, to consider yourself, slow in one thing and then become fast. Like that's why we do it. Like, and that's the interesting, I think, psychological dynamic too with athletes, is that they all want to be perfect and great at it, but yet we don't, because then we'd quit and we'd find something else to do. And that's why triathlon is this like beautiful mixture of opportunity where it allows us to do things and to perform and to compete and to get better and to kind of go on this pursuit and this journey that's super challenging but also gratifying, but at the same time so damn frustrating because we can never nail it. But again, that's why we keep coming back, is because we can't just get it just right. And even if you're one of those lucky athletes who's had that one perfect race, you'll spend the rest of your triathlon hobbyist career searching to find that one day again. And that's why we hate it, and that's why we love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just hard, man. It's hard to go fast. It's hard to put all that together and feel good. It's hard to have the right energy levels throughout training. And we were just talking about the run reservoir and during the race and kind of spacing that out so you have something left in the tank for the next and the next and the next. And that's what training's all about. You know what I mean? It's like that's why I'm, I've always been a strong proponent of stopping a little bit ahead when you feel pretty good. Mm-hmm. When you're like, as long as you've done something, I mean, I would used to go to the pool maybe for 3,000, swim 2,600 and be like, man, I feel real good. I got that whatever, but I'm out. I just was a really good swim. I'm out on a groove or something like that. And those types of things, when we try to like stretch another hour out of the bike or another 45 minutes out of the run when we probably just shouldn't, why can't we walk away? Because we want to feel that pain or we want to feel like we earned something, but it's okay to just kind of step away and feel good and look forward to tomorrow. And I think it actually helps you look forward to tomorrow. If you have a good day today and you're like end on a high note rather than ending with really, creating some bad news for yourself or whatever it is, it's like you look forward to tomorrow because it's something that seems enjoyable versus something that was just a big pain in the ass today.
Yeah, so you're like, sleep begets sleep, more sleep, more sleep. It's not like, because it must happen when people that like, I know you've gone through this, I've gone through it in spurts. It's like, once you have a few really, really shitty nights of sleep, you're more likely to have more shitty nights of sleep because you get in bed and you're like, I'm not going to sleep.
I'm not going to sleep.
And then you're stressed about it and you're wired about it. And it happens over and over and over and over again. And we're going back to the bike analogy, or we talked about on, the previous podcast. It was like, if you have a crappy fit, you're uncomfortable and you hate it, you're not going to be like, I can't wait to bike tomorrow. You know, you're going to be like, I hate it. But if it's super comfortable, it's fun. You're like, all right, I'm in. Like, I want to do this. You see improvement. And that's, again, that is why it is never ending, right? The sport and the pursuit of just figuring out. But we can end it on this one. But that's why always when we have someone in for a swim analysis, we always stop them on their last run when they've done it perfectly. Not like, oh, well, they're doing it great. Let's just keep going until you fatigue. But no, because you don't want your lasting memory or muscle memory or pattern technique to be of when it fell apart, right? That's not a memory you want. It needs to be when you nailed it, right? Of when you cemented it, that stroke was perfectly, you felt in a groove. That's the memory you need to lead with. And I think athletes and triathletes specifically are so bipolar in their attractiveness to both. The feeling of perfection, but also the feeling of I'm just not good enough. I got to have more, you know, and it's that infighting that I think causes so much turmoil that really gets you nowhere.
Wow. That's powerful, man.
And
keeps driving. I'm just not good enough. Yes, you are. You're good enough.
Yeah. It's like the devil and
you're good enough.
The triathlete
You're a good
devil
person.
and the
love yourself.
It's a Saturday Night Live skit.
Take care of yourself and
where he's looking in the mirror and
reward yourself
people
with
like
cookies.
With cookies.
More cookies.
Yeah. Go sit on Santa's lap, ask him for a toy. Yeah, do something. Enjoy yourself. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. If you want to figure out more about all the things we do and what we offer, you can always go by our website, c26triathlon.com, our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you're a latecomer or a late bloomer or just a boomer, you can hit up Mike. He is at crushingiron@gmail.com.
Yeah.
If you need anything from me, I'm right in the middle. Generation X, baby.
Millennials hit me up.
Millennials hit him. Don't hit me up. He comes the top and the bottom. I'm with Gen X, baby, all the way. C26coach@gmail.com.
I like them all.
See you, dude.
See ya.